Hello and welcome to Liberty Nation's LNTV. I'm your host, Mark Angelides. Now, we've all been there. We've all been pulled over by the police, whether for good reason or bad. Now, what's happening, there's a case called Kansas versus Glover, and the Supreme Court is considering a challenge to the rule about pulling over cars. Here to make sense of it is our legal affairs editor, Mr. Scott DeCosenza. Welcome, Scott.
Hello, Mark. Thank you.
So, Scott, what are the facts of the case?
Well, Mr. Glover was driving in Kansas, where he is a resident, and he did not have a valid driver's license. The vehicle that he was traveling in was registered to him. Now, the police officer just ran the tag without there being any reason to do so, such as a traffic infraction. A lot of times in the United States, police just run tags to see what comes up. Well, what came up was that the registered owner of the vehicle did not have a valid license. So the cop pulled him over and went ahead and ticketed Mr. Glover. Mr. Glover says you can't pull somebody over just because the registered owner of the vehicle does not have a valid driver's license, because any person who's authorized to do so may be legally driving the car, not necessarily the registered owner.
So the question is, what gives the police to do a random pullover without any
well, let's walk back that random. The randomness is them running the plate. The pulling over isn't necessarily random. The police are arguing in this case, Mark, that because the registered owner doesn't have valid driving privileges, they can then make a reasonable inference that that's the person operating the vehicle at the time, and then go ahead and execute a traffic stop.
Okay, so we know that the Supreme Court, it only takes a very tiny fraction of the cases that are appealed to it. So why are they taking this one?
Mark, Kansas has ruled that the police are not able to do this. That's where this particular case sits. But at least 12 other states have ruled in the opposite fashion, which is to say the laws in those states say that the police are allowed, based on registration owner driving privileges only, allowed to pull people over. So with that split in the United States based on what federal law provides, in other words, this is a question about whether our rights under the United States Constitution allow this. Because there's now a split, the Supreme Court thinks it's important to resolve this split and create a unified rule for the whole country. And that's why they've accepted the case to make a judgment.
So am I right in thinking that there are elements of the 10th Amendment and the 4th Amendment at stake here?
It is a 4th Amendment case, 100%.
So what do you think the outcome's going to be, Scott?
Well, it will rest on whether 5 justices think that it's reasonable for the police to conclude under the laws governing their reasonableness test under the 4th Amendment. Is it reasonable to think that the driver of a car is the person who the car is registered to? The trial judge, Mark, in this case in Kansas, noted herself that she owned 3 cars. She drove one, her husband drove another, and her daughter yet drove the third one. So I think it's very common in the United States for multiple drivers to be assigned or to drive a car registered to a certain individual. The police say even still, there's a high likelihood that the registered driver will be operating the car, and that's what should allow us the right to stop people. We're going to have to see what the Supreme Court says, and I will surely be back to let you know.
Well, that's very interesting. Thank you, Scott, for filling us in on all the details here. Much appreciated.
Thanks, Mark.
And thank you to you at home for watching. If you learned a little something, if you enjoyed it, you can press the subscribe button, the like button, or you can leave a comment, ask us a question, or you can head straight over to libertynation.com, where we've got a range of articles, podcasts, radios, and more TVs. Hope to see you soon.